The first time I realized my husband was lying to me, he was sitting 3 feet away, tying his shoes. Not sneaking around, not whispering on the phone, not scrambling for excuses, just tying his shoes. I asked a simple question, the kind married couples ask without thinking, and he paused. That pause, barely a second, ended our marriage, detonated a senior executive's career, and triggered the most meticulous revenge plan I've ever executed. I didn't catch him cheating by snooping. I caught him because I understand systems, and people, when pressured, always behave like systems. Victor Hale was still smiling when the ethics committee meeting started. That's what still sticks with me. He sat at the polished walnut table, jacket perfectly tailored, cufflinks aligned, leaning back like this was a formality he'd breezed through. He'd done this before, charmed his way out of consequences. I'd watched it happen for years. My wife, sat outside the room, pale, silent, clutching a leather folder she thought would protect her. It wouldn't. The chair of the committee adjusted her glasses and said calmly, "Mr. Hale, before we proceed, we need to clarify one issue regarding your amnesty claim." Victor nodded. "Of course." She clicked a remote. A voicemail filled the room. His voice, low, confident, familiar. "Dan, let's not complicate this. Just approve the disclosure as discussed. Loyalty goes both ways." The smile slid off his face like it had been greased. And that's when he looked at me. Not like a rival, not like an enemy. Like a man realizing too late that the quiet one in the room had built the guillotine. My name is Daniel Mercer. For 11 years, I worked as a Senior Compliance Analyst at Hawthorne & Co., a consulting firm obsessed with optics, governance, and pretending integrity could be packaged into PowerPoint slides. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't political. I didn't network at happy hours. What I did do was design systems that caught liars. Specifically, I helped draft something called the Ethical Disclosure and Loyalty Clause, a response to a procurement scandal that nearly took the company down 5 years ago. It was my fingerprint on the rulebook. At home, I lived a different life. Married 9 years, no kids, 2 demanding careers, a shared Google Calendar that used to feel like teamwork. My wife, Elena, was a strategic consultant, smart, ambitious, restless in the way people get when they believe they're meant for more. I trusted her. That was my first mistake. The night it started, nothing dramatic happened. It was a Thursday, rain tapping against the windows. Elena stood by the door pulling on her heels while I skimmed emails on my tablet. She was dressed better than usual for a client dinner. Dark blazer, hair styled, not rushed. "Which client?" I asked, distracted. She hesitated. "Just long enough." Northbridge, the vendor team." "Northbridge." I nodded, but something in my chest tightened. Not jealousy, pattern recognition. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I checked the internal calendar out of habit. Northbridge's meetings were scheduled for the following week. I told myself it was nothing. At work the next morning, I noticed something else. Victor Hale's name appeared 3 times in my audit queue. Executive exception approvals. Those were rare. They bypassed standard review under the justification of strategic urgency, usually reserved for crises or regulatory deadlines. Victor had approved 3 in a single week, all for the same department, business development, all tied to travel reimbursements, and all submitted by Elena. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. Coincidence, I told myself. Then an email landed in my inbox at 11:46 p.m. that night. From Victor Hale. Subject, quick one. "Hey Dan, hope all's well at home. Need a fast approval on an exception. You know how leadership values agility." The phrasing bothered me. Hope all's well at home. Too personal, too knowing. I approved nothing. I flagged it for review.
and I started paying attention. 2 weeks later, I was standing at the front of Conference Room B, long table, glass walls, skyline view, delivering our quarterly ethics briefing. Dry material, necessary material. I was explaining updated disclosure requirements when Victor interrupted me. He didn't raise his hand. He leaned back, smiled, and said loudly, "Dan, do we really need to terrify everyone with hypotheticals? We hire adults here." Laughter rippled through the room. My face stayed neutral. Years of compliance teaches you that. "These aren't hypotheticals," I replied evenly. "They're documented violations." Victor shrugged. Context matters. Translation: rules are for people without leverage. After the meeting, HR emailed me. They were streamlining committees. My seat on the cross-department ethics panel was no longer necessary. At home that night, Elena didn't bother lying. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and said, "I didn't plan for it to happen." Victor Hale. Months-long affair. Promises of influence, protection, advancement. He didn't just sleep with my wife. He recruited her. The final escalation came disguised as routine. An automated alert hit my system. Disclosure amendment submitted. Priority review. Submitted by Victor Hale. Approved by Victor Hale. I opened it. Incomplete. Deliberately vague. No vendor named. No dates specified. No mention of romantic involvement. And attached to it a note. "Dan, let's sync before this goes further. I trust your discretion." Minutes later, my phone rang. Victor's voice was calm, warm. "Look, I know how this works. I protect my people. I expect the same." That was the moment. Not when I learned about the affair. Not when my marriage collapsed. That moment when he assumed my integrity was negotiable. That's when I decided to test his loyalty. Not with emotion, with policy. I sat alone in my office after hours, lights dimmed, staring at the employee handbook. Page 64, Clause 7.3.1. Failure to disclose personal relationships that may influence vendor neutrality constitutes gross misconduct regardless of intent. I flipped forward. Page 89. Ethical self-reporting amnesty window. A clause I had helped write. A trap hiding in plain sight. And I smiled. Because Victor Hale had no idea the man he tried to intimidate had built the system he was about to die in. I drafted the email, carefully, neutrally. Subject: Routine Compliance Audit, Business Development. I reread it twice. Then I hit send. And leaned back, listening to the hum of the building, knowing this was only the beginning. Because people like Victor always mistake opportunity for safety. And loyalty? Loyalty is easiest to test when someone thinks they're untouchable. The email went out at exactly 7:02 a.m. I remember the time because I watched the seconds tick forward in the corner of my screen before clicking send, the way people do before stepping off a ledge, not because they're scared, but because they want to remember the moment gravity takes over. From Daniel Mercer. To Business Development Leadership. CC, HR Compliance, Legal Oversight. Subject: Routine Compliance Audit, Business Development. As part of our standard quarterly controls review, compliance will be conducting a focused audit of business development disclosures, expense exceptions, and vendor relationships. This review includes eligibility for the ethical self-reporting amnesty window, where applicable. Please direct any questions to me directly. I'm available to support accurate and timely submissions. Neutral, polite, lethal. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the office ceiling. Fluorescent panels, one flickering slightly above my desk. Facilities had been meaning to fix it for months. Victor replied in under 10 minutes. From Victor Hale. Subject: Routine Compliance Audit. Appreciate the heads up, Dan. Always happy to cooperate. Let's grab coffee later and align on scope. Align on scope. That's what men like Victor say when they mean control the narrative. I replied just as quickly, happy to clarify over email to keep everything documented. No coffee, no hallway conversations, no ambiguity. And that's when the real tension began. By mid-morning, the building felt different. Business development occupied the West Wing, open floor plan, glass-walled offices, motivational slogans stenciled on concrete walls, move fast, build trust, deliver results. Compliance sat on the opposite side of the building, older carpet, smaller offices, actual doors. I watched from my desk as Victor crossed the atrium twice in an hour, stopping to talk to people, laughing louder